Hey everybody, welcome to this awesome session where we're going to be talking about all different types of stuff, but we're going to be ending with you understanding the pyramids and understanding why raw time matters. But instead of going with all the numbers, I'm just going to jump to teaching you why. Okay. But to do that, let's go ahead and start with the Fibonacci 60-digit repeat pattern. I talk about this pattern all the time because it is very important to understanding that there are cycles that exist in our reality. So when you are looking at this, what you are actually seeing is that if I were counting the Fibonacci sequence, which is Fibonacci sequence is just the first digit, the next digit, and the next digit, and just keeps adding. So if I were to add 0 plus 1, well, I will have 1. If I have 1 plus 1, I got 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8, so on and so forth. So as you can see, it just adds the one before and it keeps going. Okay. Now it gets bigger and bigger, right? Because 8 plus 13 or 5 plus 8 is 13, and 8 plus 13 is going to be 21. 21 plus 13 is 34. So as you can see, it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So by the time we're at the 216th number, it is actually a quadrillion number. It's massive. So what we found is we found that there's this hidden pattern that exists that's at the last digit of the Fibonacci sequence. And this is called base 10. Any point in time that you take the last digit of any number, then it's actually called base 10. So as you can see here, now here's something that's cool. Base 10 only exists in our minds. We can only perceive something, which is why if you were to put time into a base, it actually belongs in base 10, which might be why it is that you have 60 digits here that perfectly fit before they repeat again. And what that means is it means that if I were to take the last digit of Fibonacci, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, well, what's the last digit of 13? It's a 3. What's the last digit of 11? Because 8 plus 3 is 11, is a 1, right? So I end up having this, you're basically adding them as you're going. So 8, 5 plus 8 is 13, and so that's a 3. 3 plus 8 is 11, and so that ends up being a 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. 5 plus 4 is going to end up being 9. 9 plus 5 is going to be 14. So what do? We take the last digit, which would be a 4. So if you continue doing this, you actually end up creating this amazing 60-digit repeat pattern. So no matter how big that number gets, when it hits this point right here, if it's a billion, a number that's a billion, the last digit's going to be a 1. Then if it's the, next number, it's going to be a 1. If it's the next number, it's going to be a 2. If you keep adding them, no matter how big that number gets, you end up with this pattern right here, and it does not break. Okay. Now, what's really important about that is that when you look at it, there are actually only four locations of zeros. Okay. You have north, south, east, and west. They fit perfectly at exactly these places. Okay. Not only that, so we're going to go ahead and check out the next one. Not only that, what you can see is that not only is it a compass of north, south, east, and west, it is also a clock. Because as you can see, if you look here, every fifth number is a 5 or a 0, making almost a perfect cosmic clock. 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock is the zeros. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it starts over. And this is found with the Fibonacci. I didn't change anything. I just took the last digit if you were naturally counting. And it creates this perfect 360-degree clock. Okay. Now, that alone would be absolutely amazing. And we can dive into that. But to get to the pyramid, we've got to actually apply it to another shape. And that shape is going to be a triangle, specifically the 3, 4, 5 triangle. Okay. Now, a 3, 4, 5 triangle is basically the understanding that you have 3 on this side, 4 on this side, 5 on this side. Okay. So I took the Fibonacci last digit, and as you can see, I ended up aligning it to where it is 0 to 5, 5 to 5, 5, and then, of course, the last number because 0 is going to start down here. And that gives you 3 slots. Okay. Now, if you do the exact same thing, remember the zeros and fives are important. Start with 0 to 0, 0 to 5, 5 to 5, and 5 to the end. You end up with 4 of them: 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. And if you do the same thing with, of course, this side, you have 5 to 5, 5 to 0, 0 to 5, 5 to 5. And of course, to the end, you end up with 5 specific slots. Okay. Now, that alone is really cool, but it doesn't stop there because if you were to add the digits up, okay, if you were to end up aligning them, as you can see, so I want to make sure you can see this crystal clear. We're just dealing with the Fibonacci 60-digit repeat pattern, and we now have it on a 3, 4, 5 triangle. And if we were to add these digits up, we actually end up with 56 here, 105 here, and 119 here. Well, the 345 triangle actually comes from Pythagoras, who created this formula that says a squared, which is a side, plus b squared, which is b side, equals c squared, which is c side. Well, if you take 56 squared, you end up with 3,136. If you take 105 squared, you end up with 11,025. And if you take 119 squared, you end up with 14,161. Well, 3,136 plus 11,025 is exactly 14,161. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay. But it doesn't stop there because there's another alignment that shows that this perfectly fits, which is that there are actually 15 numbers located on this side. There are 20 numbers located on the B side, and there are 25 numbers located on the C side. And I'm pretty sure you can guess it. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. 15 squared, or 15 times 15, is 225. 20 squared is 400. 25 squared is 625. 225 plus 400 is 625. Well, as you can see, it fits absolutely perfectly. But the most amazing thing is Fibonacci should have absolutely nothing to do with this shape. It should have nothing to do with the 3, 4, 5 triangle. It should have nothing to do with a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It should have nothing to do with time. And it should have nothing to do with the compass. And yet here it is, fitting perfectly into all these locations. Okay. So now what you can do is you can take that 3, 4, 5, and you can apply it to an understanding of time. Okay. So in other words, if it's representative of 3 hours, 4 hours, and 5 hours, you'll find out that 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. So you're talking about hours. Okay. But remember, this is a 60-digit repeat pattern. So what it's really actually saying is it's saying that each one of these gaps representing an hour would actually represent a full 60-digit repeat pattern. You see, so it would be one, that would be 60, 60, 60 is going to be 120 minutes. 120 minutes is exactly 3 hours. And you can do that all the way across. Okay, really amazing stuff. So, but before we continue on with that, let's go ahead and go back to what we're talking about, which is bringing it back to the pyramids. But to do that, first thing we have to do is we have to apply it to that circle again. And so as you can see here, this is actually applying it to the circle of the 360 degrees because everything, remember, time is what you're looking at on the outside here because time is in the fourth D, which is Einstein backed it up as well. Space and time are in the understanding the 4D together. So time is in the 4D. Therefore, everything in existence should be in the center. And that's what you're actually seeing here. You're seeing the three dimensions that we live in and the fourth dimension that holds it together. Okay. There's a lot that goes into this, but I just want to keep it very basic, right? You have the first dimension, you have the third dimension, you have the second. And the reason it's that way is because we actually live in the three. Well, technically, I'm sorry. You have the first dimension, you have the second dimension, you have the third dimension because this would go on. But what you're actually seeing here is you're seeing that the dimensions basically work within each other. So the third, we live in the second dimension because if you look at something, it's flat, but you have to use your imagination to kind of create the idea that there would be another side. And then once you see it, then it becomes your reality. So this is basically just the understanding of the three different phases, the three different realities, stages that we live in. Of course, having the center right here. Any of you guys that know vortex math know that you could actually use this vortex math understanding 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 7, 7 to 5, and right back. And as you can see, it creates these wings that you're seeing right here. And we'll be talking about vortex math at another time. But as you can see, you have these wings. And then, of course, you can do it sideways. So you end up with the exact same pattern. And that's basically what creates this overlapping understanding. Now, as you can see right here, if you were to draw right here, you might have to use a little bit of your imagination and kind of look at it a little bit. But as you can see, you're looking at the pyramid of Giza right here. It would have the 8 different sides if you could see the back of it. So you're just seeing the 2 sides and the 4 different faces located right here. Okay. So what I want you to do, and I decided to create something so you can visualize this, is that everything fits inside of this. Okay, so an example, if this was the universe or your home or however it is, everything fits within time. Time then affects everything, and that's basically what we're talking about. Okay, so again, if you have the 3, 4, 5 triangle here, what we're going to do is we're going to separate these numbers by the zeros and the fives into what I like to call the DNA understanding of time. And that's what you're looking at right here. Okay, so if you're just going again, zero, then to five, five starts a new one, starts a new one, starts a new one, so on and so forth. And you have the 12 different representations of color. Yes, we do have the red, the orange, the yellow, the green, the blue, the indigo, and the violet. Then we have the ultraviolet, and then we have the highest that you can get to. Then you have the disillusion of color, the absence of color, and the collection of color, giving you the 12. And as you can see, each one again is separated, therefore giving you the 60 numbers. Okay. So I just want to show you how this all kind of works together. And if I were to draw like this and go like this and like this and go like this, you end up with basically DNA. Okay, so inside, of course, of our time is going to end up being our DNA. Now, this is what Nikola Tesla was talking about when he told you very clearly, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. This is also what he was talking about when he said that 3, 6, and 9 are the keys to the universe. If you only understood the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, you would have a key to the universe. And I'm going to reveal to you that understanding. But before we get to that, because I know that there are a lot of people who don't believe that he said that, all I want you to do is I want you to ask yourself, if you can't find anybody who actually said this and they don't have any proof that he said this, why not just give him credit? Because he's the one who led me to all this information and a lot of us to these understandings that we're talking about. Okay. So let's go back to this. And what I want you to see is that each one of these, other than zero, ends in a 1 through 9. Therefore, you can actually apply a solfeggio frequency to one of these numbers: 174, 174, 285, 396, 528, 852, 396, 174, 417, 528, 963. And as you can see, each one of them, except for the zeros, would end up having a direct correlation to a frequency and also a direct correlation to a color. Okay. So now I'm going to show you how and why these fives and these zeros are so important, but I am not going to go into the totality of this lesson. Okay. I just want to show you this. So as you can see right here, this right here is the 13 circles of the 60-digit repeat pattern. Okay. It's the 13 circles, which ends up creating, of course, what are we looking at? We're looking at the fruit of life. Now, if you were to draw a line through all of these going this way, you actually end up, we'll find out that they're crossing through fives and they're crossing through zeros. So all these right here are crossing through the zeros and all these are crossing through the fives. And of course, remember what is five? It's time because of the hours that it's hitting. So as you can see here, what you would end up creating is what is referred to as the basically Earth cube in essence, or the understanding that we live in a cubic time understanding. Okay, so all I did was just draw lines between what you were seeing there, and you end up with a cube within a cube, which is exceptionally important to understanding that basically a prism, right? Because that's what you're looking at here, a prism. I just kind of filled it in for you. It's basically a prism within a prism, which ends up revealing a very awesome alignment of color. So again, we're looking at what would be considered a cube within a cube. And then if you were to draw lines to all of them, you end up with what is called Metatron's cube. Okay. So let's go ahead and go back here. We're talking about the different frequencies per one. And so if you were to apply a frequency to each one of these numbers, you would actually find that every single frequency is a 3, a 6, or a 9 digital root. Okay, 174 is going to be a 3, 285 is going to be a 6, 528 is going to be a 6, 396 is going to end up being a 9, 369, all the way through this. 369. And remember, the zeros are where they're meeting in these certain locations. So they're basically like portals in essence. So they don't need a frequency because they're connecting to something. Okay. So as you can see, 3, 6, and 9 would basically play over and over and over. So let's go back to what we were looking at here. Okay, so you have this inside. Now, to understand string theory, you have to understand that if there's something outside of us, basically it has to connect to that string. Okay, so if you imagine that these are strings, we need to figure out what is outside that would connect to the strings on the inside. Well, we already know the answer to this because what we're really talking about is we're talking about the number 432. And I'm going to end this showing you how this all aligns. Okay. So I want you to imagine that outside of this understanding, outside of everything, is basically these strings, and these strings are 432. Okay. So now what I want you to see is I want you to see, I'm going to go ahead and take two of those 3, 4, 5 triangles, And I am going to apply them to, of course, the Pyramid of Gaza. And as you can see here, Nikola Tesla's 3, 6, and 9 pops out because 3, 6, and 9 is going to be located on the sides where the sun is going to be hitting so that you actually see that there is a concave to the understanding of the Pyramid of Gaza. Okay. Now, the light comes through. We also know that the radio waves are going to end up pushing down because we've been able to see on the spectrum that basically the frequencies are stronger down below. So it's pushing it down. Okay. So the chambers in the Egypt's Great Pyramid concentrate radio waves by pushing them down. The light hits the location of the 3, 6, and 9. If you only knew the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, you'd have a key to the universe. The waves are pushed down into the earth. The earth then radiates it back out into a toroidal flow. And I want you to see what that looks like. Okay. So as you can see here, the yellow is going to end up being the new 440 hertz that we created with this understanding. The outside right here is going to end up being 432 RPMs. It's literally minutes, not seconds. Okay. And I want you to understand that because I'm going to show you that 432 hertz or 432 literally per second is going to be on the outside. Okay. As you can see, these two are working together because that's what vortex math does. Once it hits the center, it bounces back up, and then you end up having the toroidal flow going within it, a cycle within a cycle. And the reason that it is very difficult to get to this right here is because this is blocking you. This yellow cycle is blocking you because it is 440 hertz that we created in World War II. That basically we started recording no longer in the 432 hertz, which again is nature's natural frequency, and we moved it to 440 hertz. Okay. Now, if you were to look at just the numbers, you will see that if I take the octaves, right? If I take the overtones of 440 hertz, I start with 44, that's an 8, right? And so then I double that. Well, that's 88. Well, 8 plus 8 is going to be 16. So as you can see, 1 plus 6 would end up being 7. So if you keep doing that, it's 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's a countdown. Okay. And the reason that we have such a difficult time with stomach issues and headaches and migraines and unalignment is because the music and the things that are being recorded digitally are using a 440 hertz frequency. So it's constantly counting down. And if you don't know what that feels like, it's basically the difference between harmony and chaos. If you're driving down the road and all of a sudden your favorite song comes on the radio and you're singing, and then all of a sudden that static hits and it's like not, it's there, but it's not there, and it bothers you kind of thing. That's what it feels like. It feels like this unbalanced kind of feeling, and that's what chaos is. Okay. So if you look at 432 hertz, you will see that if you start with 36, 3 plus 6 is 9. And then you duplicate that to 72, 7 plus 2 is 9. And you duplicate that to 144, and then you end up doing that to 288, and then 256. And as you can see, they're all nines. So it keeps this perfect balance within you, right? And if you go back and look at this, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for that balance, right? Your chakras are all about that balance. Okay. So when we're looking at this, when we're looking at this, what we are seeing is we are seeing that we want to keep this balance, and that balance would be connecting this right here at 432 to this out here at 432. The reason I teach raw time is because there is a very specific time when these two collapse and you're automatically connected back out here to this 432 hertz. Okay. And that's raw time. And I'll end with talking about that. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and talk about where this 432 comes from. Okay, why is it 432 hertz? It's very simple because if you look at something called the precession of the equinox, which is basically the Earth going through the cycle around the sun, you will see that there are points A, B, C, and D. This over here is the galaxy. The galaxy is the brightest that we have. It is brighter than the sun. Okay. So whenever the Earth is going through, you will see that there are very specific points when we are further away from the sun and further away from the galaxy. And when that happens, we call those asleep moments. Okay, so as you hit A, we're the furthest away. Those are called dark ages or asleep moments. And then as you come to B, we start waking up. As we get to C, we're the most awake. As we get to D, we start moving away from it. It's just this constant cycle that you've seen throughout history. Okay. The totality of the Earth traveling from A, B, C to D is 25,920 years. Right. So when you're looking for a frequency, right, you have to take frequency equals value over time. Okay, so if you just do a triangle, you got value, frequency, and time. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply this information. We know that a frequency is the rate at which something occurs or is repeated. Okay, so don't pay attention to the second, pay attention to the cycle. What we're going to do is we're going to take that 25,920, we're going to divide it by 60, right? We're going to end up with 432, which is RPMs, basically the understanding of 432 per minute. Okay, 432 things are happening per minute. Okay, so that's going to be the RPMs. So that is why when you're looking at this right here, you're looking at the RPMs. The blue is the RPMs. The 440 hertz is going to end up being what we changed it to. And then you're going to end up finding the 432 hertz out here. Okay, 432 hertz is what you want to connect to. It is the thing that created everything. It's why Bach and Beethoven and all the famous people literally tuned their instruments to the most natural they could find, which is 432. There is music that is done in scores of movies that is 432 that is better, that wins Oscars. There's information about 432 hertz in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, as well as in the Bible. And if you were to go back to the original frequencies I was showing you here, and you were to take each one of these frequencies, every single one of these frequencies holds a 4, a 3, or a 2, which is one of my biggest jokes because in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it says that everything, basically the answer to life and everything is 42. But if you were to actually say that just a little slower, it sounds like 432, right? And so it's like if you were to slow down a computer and it gives you the answer, it'd be 432, which is the answer to everything. 432 is the answer to everything that we're talking about. Okay. So raw time. What is raw time? How does it work? It's very simple. At 12:37, this grid starts coming down. When it is 108, okay, then basically it is down, just like this. I'll show you live time. It's going to come and it's going to collapse. Boom. That is going to be at 108. At 108, you need to speak out loud. You need to create a vibration, right, that reaches that 432. Ask for something, ask for guidance. Don't ask for something physical. Ask for wisdom, ask for knowledge, ask for understanding. Okay. Ask for these things and you will receive answers because to connect to your basically your what am I trying to think of? To connect to your string theory, right? Going back to looking at this string theory understanding, to connect to you literally means you just have to send out a vibration. That vibration needs to align with 432. Okay, so by doing this, by using raw time, you're connecting to that 432. So ask for wisdom, guidance, ask for understanding, ask for compassion, kindness, trust. You will receive it in that moment. All right. So this ties it all together. As you can see, I don't really want to go backwards through this because it's a lot of information, but we're going to just kind of sum it up. We're talking about these two different grids that are around you that basically one of them slows things down. One of them causes basically this chaos when they drop down because they used a lazy system called vortex math. When they drop down, you are connected to the 432 hertz that is naturally out here. We know that the frequencies, the sunlight is basically hitting the pyramids, they're being pushed down, then basically into the earth, which creates that toroidal flow that I just showed you. Okay. Where does that come from? That comes from the sunlight that hits the 3, 6, and 9s from the Fibonacci 60-digit repeat. And if you didn't think that was amazing enough, if you actually were to measure the angle of the pyramid, it's 51.84. And each one of these is 60 numbers. Well, 51.84 times 60 times 60 is 186,624, which is and has always been the actual measurement of the speed of light until 1980 when they changed it to 186,282 miles per second. And that is only 342 off from the original. Okay. So you can choose either one that you want to, but basically, if you were to take the sun, which is 432,000 miles in radii, and you take that 432 that I talked about before and you amplify it, in other words, you square it by itself, 432 times 432 is 186,624, the exact same number that I just read off here. And if that wasn't enough, if you actually go into the Bible, you will find that there are 31,104 verses. And if you multiply that by the sixth day that man was created, in other words, the humans, the light, hue, and then matter, basically when we were created, you end up also at exactly 186,624. Okay. Those are three different locations that that number pops up. And the only difference between NASA's measurement and that one is 342 miles. That's it. So it is just absolutely amazing how it all just fits in together. And so then it ends up taking you back to, we're talking about string theory. You vibrate your string strong enough, it will literally pull this way, and it'll pull it this way. And if you were to pull these strings, you collapse the wings. And what happens when you collapse the wings? You have a wave, a line, which basically no one can see. What happens if you collapse the wings this way? You end up with a line going this way. What happens when they collide together? It creates a literal graph. It creates the quantum grid that you live in. Okay. Everything in reality is inside of time. Okay. And so therefore, time is the 4D, which is on the outside. When you're looking at this, you're looking at the three different dimensions that we've talked about. They're all connected. You collapse that center, literally, you create a particle of light. Particle of light becomes your reality. And where does all this come from? It comes from the 3, 4, 5 triangle of the a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Ironically, Pythagoras said c squared, and we know that c squared in Einstein's E equals mc squared is the speed of light. So it's really interesting how c squared has these two different representations, but here I'm showing you where they could be connected. You have 15 numbers, 20 numbers, 25. You square them, you end up with a squared plus b squared equals this side right here. And if that wasn't enough, then you can also end up taking and adding the numbers of the Fibonacci, which is 56, 105, and 119. Square those off, you also end up with 14,161. And then, of course, the you end up with the circle, which the same exact numbers are on a circle, which give you the clock. Shout out to Jan 108 and also to Lucius Kahn, who basically figured out this clock, figured out the compass. Uh, I know that Lucius Kahn was working on the 3, 4, 5 triangle. I believe that his is off just slightly in the fact that when you look at the actual numbers, you've got 16 on this side, 19 and 25. But you need the second one, the second lock in, because then it locks in the time. And therefore, you have all three of them together. And it takes you all the way back to the compass. The compass then takes you back to the understanding of the zeros. The zeros take you back to the ultimate zero, which is the 60-digit repeat pattern of the Fibonacci sequence. Thank you so much for sticking with this. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you want to learn more about this, occult knowledge, the pyramids, join the Nine Vibes Universal School. I'll have the link down below. It is $18 a month. There is so much there. There's already a community. There's a lot of information. There's classes you can automatically jump into, and there will be live classes coming 2025. All right. Get your nine vibes aligned.